Hey guys, it's Roscoe, and on the Space Coach today I'd like to talk about Sir Terry Pratchett, who's very sadly passed away today. Obviously most known for his Discworld novels, which were incredibly funny, hilarious. I burst out laughing loud on the train or the tube or in public so many times from reading his books, and I'm sure you're all the same as well. Obviously that struggle he had with Alzheimer's has finally claimed him, dignified to the end of course. The final series of tweets announcing his passing I thought very moving and very appropriate, that they should describe it as he finally walks off into the endless desert with his old friend Death. Very appropriate. And if it's true that heaven is what you make of it, then I'm sure he's giving all the orders in Ankh-Morpork now, and the patrician is just wondering what on earth is happening, and he's probably bossing the librarian about, and also I'm sure the Arch-Chancellor and Granny Weatherwax is probably wondering what is suddenly going on with this guy suddenly in their midst. I do hope so. I like to think of it that way. I thought I would share with you some of my favourite Terry Pratchett books. I've read just about all of them. I'm trying to remember if I've read Diggers and Truckers. If I have, it must have been 30 years ago. I've read pretty much everything else apart from, say, the Science of Discworld books. So, how about we start with this one? Guards. This was the first book that had the City Watch in it, you know, Captain Carrot, Nobby, Sergeant Colon, and of course Vimes, the great character throughout many of the books. This particular one was about dragons, in fact, and how the people united can never be ignited, so they thought. It was a really good book, as all of Terry Pratchett's are. I've always really enjoyed his footnotes. Hilarious. Very keen insight he had into human nature, definitely. Several of his viewpoint characters, such as, say, Granny Weatherwax, or Rincewind, or Nanny Ogg, or the Arch-Chancellor, or any of them, found so much more information from what was in the footnotes. Very good. And the rest of the university faculty, when I think about it, it's so funny. The dean and the chair. There's some of the others. Ponder Stibbons, the perennial graduate student, so funny. Not in this book, obviously. So yeah, Guards, highly recommended. It was a very funny book. I really enjoyed it. One of the ones that really has made me laugh out loud in public is this one, Pyramids. It was his Egypt analogue, the Kingdom of Jelly Baby, where the heir to the throne, Tepik, is sent off to Ankh-Morpork, to the Assassin's Guild, for his education. It's what gentlemen do. You know, they go to the Assassin's Guild, not necessarily to be assassins, but to get some culture and some learning, and some very good knowledge on how to poison people. Yeah, so then his father passes away while he's still at school, or after he's just graduated, and all of a sudden all the ancient powers of the Egyptian gods come to him. So he's walking around in a daze, and there's corn growing up from the ground where his feet have stood on, all that sort of stuff. So he ends up going back to Jelly Baby to become king. The high priest of the ancient religion, who's been there forever, literally, isn't happy about the change of regime, tries to inculcate him in the ways of Jelly Baby. But Tepik's a modern man now that he's had his Assassin's Guild education, and he doesn't think he should just be killing people just for the hell of it, or handing out summary harsh judgments for no reason. So he gets deposed by the high priest, and then somehow all the gods come to life. The kingdom of Jelly Baby gets swallowed up in some sort of fractal, and Tepik and the lady that he's hooked up with, handmaiden of the court, who was supposed to be executed with the old king, one of the summary harsh judgments I was talking about, she didn't want to die, and Tepik didn't want her to. The only one who said they had to was the priest, and obviously it's only ever his say that's important. So they got to try and reclaim their kingdom, and the kingdom Jelly Baby stuck between two other kingdoms that were always at war, with just that keeping the peace. So now it's not there anymore. Oh, we've got to go to war now. This is also pointless. Very good book, Pyramids. Highly recommended, definitely. And now, the next one. Men at Arms. This is another of the City Guard novels with the Gone that they're trying to find. This terrible new weapon that threatens to upset the balance in Ankh-Morpork. Very good book. Also, first appearance of Angua the werewolf. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed Men at Arms. I recall, I think, university 20 years ago, so the mid-1990s, I tried to buy this book on my credit card and it got declined and confiscated. The following day I went in with some cash and bought it, and I've had it ever since. Another one that I liked from the early books was this one, Moving Pictures, and this was his Hollywood analogue. Lots of jokes about the nature of Hollywood and the film industry and the vacuousness of it all and the following of trends and all of that. Really, really funny. How it turns out all of a sudden they know how to make films, you know, the old style pre-talkies and early talkies films on that cellulose and all stuff. Very explosive. So yes, that was also a very good book, how that is tapping into another dimension and bringing the beings that live there to this, or the Discworld dimension, and you don't want that. But yes, very good, thoroughly recommended. I did enjoy that one. Now this, one of the more recent ones, Raising Steam. This was the one about the steam railway. I like how over the course of his books, it always seemed like it was set in the Middle Ages, didn't it? It was all like 1348, the year of the fruit bat and all that sort of stuff. But they started to become much more modern in their technology, especially the ones that are based in Ankh-Morpork. There was the clacks system in one of the books. That's obviously was like analog of fax machines, and then there's the, what do they call it, the Blue Nose, which is the version of BlackBerry with the little imp that organises your calendar. And this one obviously about steam trains, referenced in another one of the books. I think it's Thud, the one about the Dwarf Wars. It sounds like they're building an underground, as in the London Underground, in Ankh-Morpork at the end of it. Don't know if the final Pratchett book will cover that. And you know what, I do hope that they license the rights to someone who can carry on in his vein and bring more Discworld novels. That would be fantastic. So many topics that haven't been covered. There hasn't been a Witches novel for a long time. There hadn't been, obviously we know why. There hadn't been, I think, one of the We Free Men novels for a while. Mostly, the more recent ones had been Ankh-Morpork centred, especially with Moist von Litvig, I think. Not complaining, obviously. Any Terry Pratchett novel that's still to come will be gratefully received and devoured very quickly. This one is about football. Unseen Academicals. It was very funny, and because it goes into football and its history in quite some depth. And the current game in Ankh-Morpork, they might as well just be like kicking some severed head around, you know, through the streets. Matches last for days. If anyone scores a goal, they'll be a hero for the rest of their life, because no one scores goals. You can't. It's impossible almost. It's like playing football in a mob. Yeah, so then the patrician gets involved and they start to do serious, as it were, football. So much more recognisable to us, you know, with teams, set goals, all that sort of stuff. Very enjoyable. I did like that one. And there's some of the characters that were on the football teams you could recognise. Oh, this was the Ronaldo character, for instance, or whatever. It's very good. Now, one of the ones that I found the most funny of all of his books is this one, Masquerade. This was the one that was about opera, and it was merciless. Oh, he shredded opera and all of its nonsense in a very enjoyable way. It was a really funny book. That was the first book, well, not the first book, it had Agnes X Knit the fat girl from Lanka, who's got a little bit of natural talent with witchery, who you might remember was, I think it's Lord and Lady she's in first. So she's ran off to Ankh-Morpork to find herself. I think they make some sort of comment like, well, why do you need to find yourself? You're stood right there. Don't you know where you are? And she ends up as an opera singer, the roommate of some very typical slim, blonde, ingenue type, who's very beautiful, is exactly what the opera house is looking for, except she can't sing a note. So Agnes has to essentially sing her lines for her. It's quite funny because she can actually sing in harmony with herself on many different scales. It's quite funny. And you think shattering a wine glass is difficult. What she can do is amazing. Very good book because obviously in opera you have your Phantom of the Opera character, and there is indeed that in there. The other witches, Granny Weatherwax and Nanny York, they decide they want to go and see how Agnes is doing down in the Big Smoke and bring her back to her senses, hopefully. Because now that Margaret is the Queen of Lanka, obviously there's an opening in the coven, because witches' covens, there have to be 3. Any less, and you're just on each other. Any more, you divide into factions. 3, it kind of works, you know. The mother, the maiden, and the crone. There's the one to boss everyone around, the one to do everything, and the one who keeps the peace all the time. Yeah. Masquerade, very, very funny novel. I thoroughly enjoyed that one. Now this one I found, it was funny but it was more serious, was Feet of Clay. This was about golems and their struggle for freedom. Fascinating book. Very interesting. Lots of kind of references to our own like prehistory, like the Babylonian era and all that sort of thing. The goddess Sheol, do not ask where she comes from. Thoroughly enjoyable. And yes, the golems who have no rights, and they're like working at the bottom of pits in the darkness underwater for no money because they're just objects, they're not people. They actually want to be people, and so they make their own golem. And you know, with golems you have to put the gem into the mouth to activate it. Well, they all make their own like wishes, as it were, and write down and put it into this king golem. It drives it mad. You know, it starts killing people, all that sort of stuff. So it's all about the investigation into that. It was really interesting. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. And the golems have obviously been in many of the subsequent novels, particularly either as members of the Watch or as members of the Post Office. Now, the other one that's really funny and is like one of the classic Terry Pratchett novels is Hogfather. I lost the dust cover for this, unfortunately. This is the one that's like Christmas. Oh, so funny. Obviously, it was made into a several-part TV show as well that was quite enjoyable. So yeah, the Hogfather is missing, presumed AWOL or dead, and so Death has to step in with his sidekick Albert to do the Hogfather run and get all the presents to the kids. One of the scenes that did have me laughing out loud is where he appears in the middle of some toy store in Ankh-Morpork. These giant, dirty, filthy boars that pull the sled, and one of them does an enormous wee right in the middle of the store. One of the kids says, everyone who can't swim, hold on for dear life. Very funny. And very interesting as well about how religion, and he's addressed this before in some of his other books, I think in Small Gods for instance, where belief comes from, how you can use it, and what happens when it starts to dissipate. Very interesting, because they have to essentially bring the Hogfather back and save the world. And also, did you ever wonder just what the Tooth Fairy actually did with all those teeth it collects? Indeed. Anyway, those are the books that I have to hand just to show you. Some of the others, let's see. Good Omens that he wrote with his great friend Neil Gaiman. Hilarious. Side-splittingly funny book. It really is. Their comedy version of Damien and the Omen film is really good. I would recommend any of his books. The Carpet People, one of his, possibly his very first book, out of print for such a long time. It's one of the really little thin ones, like kids' book. Hilarious. You can see so many things that came from that when you read it. And I would actually like to thank my old friend Simon Carter, who I went to school with, for lending me, it was Strata, Dark Side of the Sun, Light Fantastic and the Colour of Magic, back when I was about 11, 12, 13. And thank you, Simon, for getting me into Terry Pratchett. You did me a great service. Yeah, brilliant author, very sadly missed, very sadly missed. Anyway, guys, that's it for this time. I just thought I'd share a few thoughts about Terry Pratchett and what his books meant to me. I had hundreds, if not thousands of hours of very enjoyable reading, flights of fantasy, very inspiring. Terry Pratchett himself, you did a lot of good, sir. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest, and the luggage will be along shortly. Please subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, like, or subscribe.